BBC News with Sue Montgomery. An uneasy truce appears to be holding in the Sudanese capital Khartoum, where residents have spoken of their fears of looting as food supplies dwindle. One man told the BBC that despite the ceasefire, it was still very difficult to secure food, as nearly all the shops were closed. Earlier, a group of Sudanese scholars, political leaders and humanitarian workers released an open letter calling for more international help for Sudan. One of those behind the letter is Dr. Al-Bakr Al-Afif.
This is the main demand for the Sudanese people. The Sudanese people cannot be ruled by military anymore. This war, whatever and whenever it stops, the Sudanese people are there demanding full civilian rules, absolute prevention of the military to come back to politics.
British American Tobacco has agreed to pay more than $600 million to the US authorities for breaching sanctions against North Korea, saying it deeply regretted the misconduct. Here's Samira Hussein.
The U.S. Justice Department, which is the authorities that had levied these fines onto British American Tobacco, basically said it was engaged in this elaborate scheme to sell tobacco products to North Korea. And what they were doing is they were using a third-party company based in Singapore to get the cigarettes into North Korea. But in addition to violating U.S. sanctions by doing business with North Korea, in addition, they also committed bank fraud because they needed to process those financial payments from North Korean entities. So it's a big double whammy for British American Tobacco.
In his first speech since announcing he's running for re-election, Joe Biden has said he aims to finish the work he has started. Addressing trade unionists, he highlighted his record in job creation, better, he said, than that of any of his predecessors. Republicans say he's out of touch. The White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, dismissed suggestions that Mr. Biden was too old to stand again for president.
When it comes to age, it's the same thing that we heard in 2020. And if you look at what the president has done this past 2 years, he's been able to deliver and get things done. Republicans in Congress, Republicans on the other side of Pennsylvania, are trying to pull us back, not move us forward. I talked about the infrastructure legislation, the CHIPS and Science Act, making sure that we're competitive against China and bringing manufacturing jobs here, which we have seen. 800,000 manufacturing jobs have been created under this president.
A civil trial has begun in New York in which the former President Donald Trump is being sued for damages for alleged rape and defamation. A former magazine columnist, E. Jean Carroll, says Mr. Trump assaulted her in the mid-90s. His lawyers deny the charges. BBC News. New research shows that concussion can have long-lasting and serious consequences. It's normally seen as a mild injury, but a Europe-wide study has found that in 45% of victims, there are changes in the ways different parts of the brain communicate with each other. This can cause symptoms such as fatigue and cognitive impairment, which last up to 6 months. Spain has requested emergency funds from the European Union to help farmers cope with the effects of a severe drought. It hasn't publicised how much money it's requested. The country's reservoirs are on average only half full. Some farmers are deciding not to sow certain crops due to the lack of rainfall. A Japanese company that was trying to make the first privately funded moon landing says it's assuming the mission has failed. iSpace said it had been unable to communicate with the unmanned lander since just before it was due to have touched down. The craft was launched by SpaceX rocket last December. The company's chief executive, Takeshi Hakamada, said the mission wasn't a complete failure.
We are very proud of the fact that we have already achieved many things during this mission 1. We have been secured the communication at the very end of the landing. That means we acquired actual flight data during the landing phase. That is great achievement for the future missions, Mission 2 and Mission 3.
The European Union says 19 online platforms will be subject to stricter rules for content from August, under regulations known as the Bloc's Digital Services Act. The services, which include TikTok, Instagram and Twitter, will have to crack down on illegal and harmful content and ensure stricter protection for children or risk fines.